Gal.
Oh, I'm so tired. Time to wind down with an egg sando and a strong zero.
ポイントカードはお持ちですか？袋はいりますか？
Don't be like our boy Gaza. Be prepared next time you're in Japan and use a translation app. Get Wi-Fi coverage across Japan, eSIM, and mini router rental with Ninja Wi-Fi. Trusted by 21 million customers worldwide, Ninja Wi-Fi provides great service for an affordable price. Visit ninjawifi.com and use the code GAL for 20% off.
この番組はグランドスポンサーの提供でお送りします。
Hey guys, and welcome to GALP. While we're on this little bit of a nostalgia streak, I just want to talk about 15 years of GALP. Of course, it's been a long time. I established this podcast by myself in 2010. I did look out for some people to give me some help, and some did. Mostly friends from high school and things like that. Some people gave me advice. Some people did animations. It was pretty cool. I'm not going to get into it, but what I do want to get into is the roots of GALP in terms of that sort of high school experience for me in terms of gaming, right? Because that was very interesting. At least I think it is. Let's get into the disclaimer. For you new folks, GALP is a weekly gaming discussion podcast under the GALP Podcast Network. We talk about all sorts of games, from big AAA titles all the way to awesome indie games, but our forte is Japanese games, so expect that a lot. We can be found anywhere where you listen to podcasts, including Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and now on YouTube. Whilst you're there, be sure to give us a 5-star review. And remember, if you want to join in on the fun, then follow us on all of our socials, whether that may be Blue Sky, TikTok, Insta, and X, formerly known as Twitter, all at Gal Podcasts. So, just to kind of paint you a picture, right? During primary school and during like even nursery school, the main games that I played were Shin Sangoku Musou, aka Dynasty Warriors. I never even played Samurai Warriors, which was kind of co-released at the same time because I felt that Samurai Warriors was a spin-off. I didn't even know who Koei was or anything like that. I just played the games for the love of the game, right? So yeah, I did play some other weird games at the same time. Some people kind of refer to them as like cousin games, like games that you only get to experience at your cousin's house, right? That weird cousin. Everyone has one that basically has these weird and wonderful games. So I did get to experience some of those. I mean, I did play SSX, but I wouldn't consider SSX as a cousin game. I think games like Ready to Rumble, I don't know if you remember that game. That game had Michael Jackson as a playable character. So that was one of the cousin games I played. Games like Soul Reaver, I played that at my cousin's house and I loved it. So I got myself a copy and things like that. It was kind of like mainly Musou games that I was playing, to be honest with you, right? It was Dynasty Warriors 2, Dynasty Warriors 4, 5, and then my cousin introduced me to GTA, and so I was playing like San Andreas and stuff, which is kind of cool. And I mean, obviously Liberty City and stuff like that. So that was kind of my extent. Oh no, there was some other ones. There was this, what was it called? No Fear mountain bike racing on the PS1. Didn't even have a PS1, but I played that game and I actually quite enjoyed it. I know that sounds really dumb, but I actually loved that game. So those kind of games are like cousin games, right? And some might argue Dynasty Warriors is a cousin game. Like most kids wouldn't be playing those games at that time. They would be playing Rayman. They would be playing, Rayman. Definitely most of those kids would be playing SSX, I'd imagine, because it was like on the demo disc for the PS2, which was, I would kind of consider the PS2 to be my generation's first console, effectively. Some people had PlayStation 1s as well, don't get me wrong. And some people had GameCubes, and like the N64 and stuff like that. So I don't know. A lot of the kids that I was friends with at school did not have GameCubes. There would be some, but no one talked to those GameCube kids. Like those were kind of considered the losers. I don't know why, but no one talked to those GameCube kids. And they were having such a great time with their games, right? You had like Mario, Sunshine, and what other games? Like was Ocarina of Time? I think Ocarina of Time was like a GameCube game. Wind Waker. Was Ocarina of Time? I don't know. There was a lot of like Zelda games as well on the GameCube, and there was Smash Bros. And all sorts. the GameCube had good games, but we just didn't get to experience it because we were PlayStation kids. And yeah, I was a PlayStation kid until pretty much until high school. So when I'm referring to high school here, for our American listeners, I'm referring to secondary school, which you probably won't know what that is. So secondary school is like from the age of 12 to 13, all the way to 18. So that's kind of your high school experience. There's year 7, year 8, year 9, year 10, year 11, and then I think there's sixth form. I don't know if there's 2 years of sixth form, or if there's 1 year of sixth form. I can't remember. Some schools don't even have a sixth form. Some, were referred to as colleges, sixth form colleges, etc. It was kind of like pre-college or university in the UK. I don't know how to explain it because Americans would just refer to that as high school. Anyway, we're going to refer to it as high school because that's what everyone would know. Kind of mixed in with junior high, actually, because it's kind of like high school and junior high. Anyway, explanation over, right? So I was going from being an 11-year-old that was playing Shin Sangoku Musou and playing games like that, and having the kids around me also play those games, to a very different landscape. A lot of the kids that wanted to be cool played on the Xbox 360 because that's a console that barely just came out at that point. I didn't have an Xbox 360 and I didn't have a PlayStation 3. I had a Nintendo Wii, which, to be fair with you, having a Nintendo Wii at launch was just such a, I don't know how to explain it. It was such a flex, like, man, you got a Nintendo Wii. And there was people that I knew, even like family members, that they couldn't get the Wii, but they got like the PlayStation 3 instead. And they were so upset. And these are like grown adults, right? And they were like, no, man, I wanted the Wii. You know what I mean? So we had the Wii. And it was one of those backwards compatible ones that allowed GameCube controllers and you can play GameCube games on them. Later revisions didn't have that. But I didn't even know that existed. I could have bought a bunch of GameCube games and started playing GameCube. I didn't know that. Anyway, besides the point. So I was basically playing the games on the Wii and still playing my PS2 games. And I was enjoying Nintendo pretty much for the first time through the Nintendo Wii. And yeah, it wasn't really cool. Like, if you wanted to be cool, you had an Xbox 360. You were playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare. You had Xbox Live. You were playing Halo 3. That's what made you cool. So we got an Xbox 360. It was pretty awesome. And I kind of really remember this because before I got an Xbox 360, my cousin in Sudan, right, requested one. So our family got him one and they shipped it over to Sudan. Oh, I say shipped it. They put it in like luggage. Yes, you know how it is. You know how it is. If you got family from overseas, you get gifts and stuff. So he had an Xbox 360 from Sudan. And I think he got it J-tagged. I don't know if he got it J-tagged in Sudan or not, but his games were like clearly rips of other games. And I was like, how the hell did he get this? Like, you look at the disc and it's like slightly faded and it's clearly someone's made a copy of this disc. And he's got like all the other games. He's got Ghost Recon. He's got like Modern Warfare. And he comes to the UK for a holiday. Brings his Xbox over. Mind you, this guy doesn't bring luggage. Doesn't bring clothing. He brings his Xbox over and we play Modern Warfare for the first time. I had never played Call of Duty. I was never interested in shooter games and stuff like this. And he introduced me to that. And I was like, oh my God, what the hell is this? And like I said, this was even before the kids at school were like talking about Call of Duty and stuff like that. He was showing me before the hype. And he was playing online as well. Obviously, I didn't know that you could do that. So that was a new thing to me. Obviously, I'm playing on the PS2. So I'm like, what the hell? Like, there's online play? Like, what? So yeah, he was showing me all of that. And, it was pretty cool. Like, it was just so awesome. I was like, oh my God, what the hell is this? I was playing the Modern Warfare campaign and I absolutely loved it. I was like, hell yeah, I need to get myself Modern Warfare. So I didn't get an Xbox at that time. I got it a few years later. I think I got an Xbox 360 in like 2007 or something like that. I didn't get it on launch. Like I mentioned, my cousin did. I didn't. But yeah, Modern Warfare. a lot of the kids were not really playing it at the time, and a lot of the kids weren't really into gaming at the time. It was kind of seen for like losers and stuff. So I went to a Catholic school in Northwest London. I'm not going to say which one. There is a lot, but you can kind of guess which one, actually. I don't know. Try and guess it. Yeah. And that's where I started the podcast. I started it because I had no one to really talk about the games that I loved, right? Everyone was like, mate, let's get on FIFA after school. Yeah, let's play this. Yeah, let's get on Modern Warfare 2. I was like, what? Modern Warfare? There's a Modern Warfare 2? I didn't know Modern Warfare 2 existed. I was like, I need to get an Xbox. I asked my sister, and she bought us an Xbox literally on her birthday, which is kind of insane. And I spent that summer playing Modern Warfare and Modern Warfare 2 online multiplayer. No, actually, that's a lie. I didn't even start playing Modern Warfare 2 because I was playing Modern Warfare 1. Sorry about this. I was playing Modern Warfare 1 online and things like that. And then Modern Warfare 2 came out in November of that year. And I got it for Christmas, got it for my birthday. And I was so excited. Because for me, Modern Warfare wasn't really my thing initially, right? I did enjoy it when I was playing it with my cousin. But it wasn't really me. Like Shin Sangoku Musou was me, right? The Warriors games were me. But Call of Duty wasn't. It was just a way for me to socialize. Because I had gone to this new school. There were some of my old friends that were there, but most of them went to a different school. And those friends had played Dynasty Warriors, right? And they played Samurai Warriors, and they played all of these quirky Japanese games. And all the kids here were basically playing FIFA and Call of Duty. And I had no interest in FIFA, and I still don't, because it's pretty much the same game every year. You could say the same thing about COD, to be fair. But Modern Warfare 2 was my way in, right? If you were good at Modern Warfare 2, or if you're good at Call of Duty in general, you got into the crowds, right? You got into making good friends. And that's what I did. I just made friends. Unfortunately, I wasn't good at Modern Warfare 2, but I think the best thing about it was I was good at team-based modes. So like domination, demolition, search and destroy, things like that. And all the kids were playing search and destroy at one point. And it was like, we need Bish on our team. He's good. He's good at the game. He's a team player. Because it wasn't about kills. It was about getting those defusals. That was basically it. And that's what I loved about Modern Warfare 2. Like, it was just such a community-based game. And I love that. Call of Duty is still kind of like that. And if you find the right squad, you can still kind of get that. But for me, I haven't really played a Call of Duty in a while because I don't have that squad anymore. There were some workmates that I used to play with, and they were great, but the schedules didn't really work out. And at the same time, I don't know. They were just playing Call of Duty all the time. And I was like, man, I want to play other stuff, you know? Like, I don't want to play Warzone. Do you know what it was? It was Warzone that ruined it for me. I'm not a fan of Battle Royales, although I do like Fortnite. But I didn't like the idea of a Call of Duty Battle Royale because there's no respawns. But then obviously they changed the modes and added blah, 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 blah. We're not talking about Warzone. Let's get back onto it. If you recall, you played Call of Duty or FIFA, and there was so many different subgroups that I kind of realized in high school, right? There's different cliques. It's kind of like Mean Girls, but like worse in a way, because they were set up in a really weird way where, you know, you had your chavs that played FIFA. Yeah, we'll play FIFA. And they also played Call of Duty. I think Call of Duty was the game that united everyone, really. And then you had some other kids that were purely, you know, playing Demon Souls. There was one kid, like he was a really good friend of mine. I don't talk to him anymore because I just haven't gotten into contact with him in a while. But he was playing games like Demon Souls and stuff like that. And I was like, dude, what? I didn't even know that game existed at the time. And he was playing it. He was playing Demon Souls. And he loved it. And this was the sort of path that he went down of Souls-like games, which is pretty cool and is very popular nowadays. But back then it was quite niche. Everyone had their niches. There was kids that would go to the computer labs during lunch and play RuneScape. There was RuneScape kids in the high school. And I tried all these different things, right? You know, I tried being the FIFA kid. I tried being the Call of Duty kid. I mean, I still play Call of Duty, but you know what? You know, I tried being the RuneScape kid at one point. They got bullied. And I got bullied for a bit, being part of the RuneScape kids. Bullying was so brutal back then. It's still brutal now, but bruh, people do not care. Like, genuinely, these kids did not give a single bleep. That's not a real bleep. I just put that in I made that noise. Anyway, these kids did not care what damage they did to anyone emotionally or mentally, even physically. So it was kind of insane. But yeah, so there were so many different types of gamers. And you didn't really realize it at the time because you're stuck in your own niche, right? You're not here to explore other people's games. But I was there because no one played Dynasty Warriors. There was one kid actually that religiously played Dynasty Warriors and still kept up to date. He was the brother of a friend of mine. It was not even the friend. It was a brother of the friend. So he was like the senpai that played Dynasty Warriors all the time. And he was playing Dynasty Warriors 6 and he would tell us about it. And he was like, yeah, the game's good. Never got it though. Never got to play it until recently. So yeah, besides the point. So there was kids like that were like excited about Dynasty Warriors, but they were in the grades above. And you can't due to like social hierarchy, you can't really interact with people in the year above without any reason, right? So, I didn't really get a chance to nerd out with him about Dynasty Warriors. I would have loved it. It would have made my time in high school so much better. But you know what? If I did that, then this podcast might not exist today. So yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about. I know 17 minutes in and I haven't even get into the right point. There was so many other like niches and cliques in terms of the gaming communities at the school. So yeah, you had your jocks, like the cool kids that were like the sporty kids. Yeah, we're playing football or soccer for our American listeners. So yeah, they were playing football all the time. Some of them were playing rugby. Sometimes they'd be playing cricket. Not all the time, but And then you had your kids that were playing basketball. And then you had your nerds. Those were the RuneScape kids. So even within them, you had different branches, right? Because like I said, those popular kids were basically playing FIFA and Call of Duty. Call of Duty was the game that united everyone effectively. Because if you didn't have it, you didn't have a social life at school. Like that's just how it was. But there was a lot of crossover. So you'd see a lot of these kids from the basketball team playing games like Gears of War, right? And they were playing it with the football team. It was pretty cool, right? Because they were sort of experiencing that game for the first time. I'm referring to like the football team, right? They had only played Call of Duty and the basketball team was like, yeah, you guys should get Gears of War. Let's play it. And they were doing that. And they were like exchanging that way. But also the basketball team were weebs. I didn't know this. And to be fair with you, I didn't really become a weeb until university or, maybe 2012. I was playing Japanese games, but I wasn't really the type of guy that was going really in depth with it. So for example, Daniil. We mentioned Daniil many, many times on podcasts before, especially on Animation Station, formerly known as Kunai. He's known as the anime guru, right? He was the guy that got me into anime, but also he got me into a lot of Japanese games. And he was talking about a lot of games that we cover on GALP today, and I didn't know about them at the time. He was talking about this game Danganronpa. I was like, what the hell is Danganronpa? He was like, dude, it's this game in Japan, came out on the PSP. I was like, what? And he showed me the game. I was like, dude, how are you playing this game? It's not even in English. He was like, don't worry. There's got an English patch. And he downloaded an English patch. I don't know how the hell this guy did it. I'm guessing obviously it's piracy, but there was a lot of English patches going around that time for like the PSP and stuff like that. And he was playing like Galgay as well. And I was like, dude, like, especially like the visual novels. He was playing a lot of anime visual novels and things, which is pretty cool because that was unheard of at the time. So he was playing those games on the PSP. That was like his main thing. But he was also really into the Final Fantasy games. And his friends as well were into the Final Fantasy games. And they brought me in. So Daniil introduced me to his friends. And he was like, look, this is Bish. He plays Dynasty Warriors, but it's still a Japanese game. Let's bring him into our fold. And I was kind of accepted by the basketball team because Daniil was in the basketball team and so were his friends. And I got to experience so many games because of it. Final Fantasy, for example, I actually got to play Final Fantasy. I was playing the Famicom games and I was also playing Final Fantasy 13, but I got so frustrated by it. The only reason I got Final Fantasy 13 was because, unfortunately, the way that the school politics worked out was you got this game if you were cool. You can be friends with us if you had this game. And I was still friends with the basketball team guys, but I didn't watch anime, so I couldn't really relate to them on that level, But at the same time, I could relate to them in terms of games. So I bought Final Fantasy 13 and I played it. To this day, I still haven't gotten past disc 2. So, yeah. Haven't finished Final Fantasy 13. Haven't played 2. Haven't played Lightning Returns. But these were the games that these kids were playing at the time. Like, bear in mind, these were also the kids that had played Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 10. And I believe some of them were even playing the online game as well, like 14 and stuff. Was 14 online, I think? I think it was. Yeah, these kids were playing all of them. Yeah. And then there was the other kids. There was some other kids that were more so I don't want to say grungy gamers, but they were like the kids that you wouldn't talk to because they were a bit dodgy, but they had some very interesting taste in games. So they would kind of play looter shooters like Borderlands, a lot of these kids, and games like that. They played Borderlands, they play Fallout. That's all they were talking about. Borderlands, Fallout, these sort of games. And it was quite interesting because I'd never played Fallout before. To this day, I still haven't played Fallout. I think it's a very, I don't know how to explain it, like solitary experience. And I don't want to get into that at the moment, you know? So maybe one day, but I don't think I'll ever get invested in a game like that because it's lonely, right? At least with Borderlands, you can come in with your friends and fuck around and, you know, play the game and enjoy it. But yeah, these kids were playing that and they were playing Gears of War. Obviously, that's how I got into Gears of War as well. And they kind of introduced it to the basketball team and the basketball team introduced it to the football team and things like that. So there was a lot of interesting games going around. And you had those little outliers. You had that one guy that I mentioned that plays the Souls-like games, you know, and then there was the kids that play RuneScape and those kids got bullied. I'm sorry if I'm laughing. I mean, those RuneScape kids got bullied, but RuneScape was a badass game and people didn't get it at the time. I think the reason why they might have gotten bullied was, I don't think it was because of RuneScape. I think it was because I mentioned kids were going to the computer lab and play RuneScape, but the only computer lab that was free was inside like the special education classrooms. So those kids would go and play RuneScape there because that was the only computers that were free. And obviously, as a result, they got bullied because of that, which sucks. And like I said, bullying sucks in general, and it's not a good thing. And I think it's only getting worse with the internet. And I kind of experienced it quite harshly in that school particularly. But if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have started the podcast. So like I mentioned, I still felt very left out because I was playing these games. And yes, it was great to experience all these different types of games, but I had no one to talk about the games that I wanted to talk about. And, you know, I started a Tumblr blog because Tumblr was a thing at the time. And I wrote about what games I like to play, and I was getting bullied because of it, which was so weird. And yeah, I don't think I said this story on the podcast before, but our school had these little homework diaries, or planners as we used to call them. And you write, oh, this is my maths homework. It's due on Monday. This is my science homework. It's due on Friday. Blah, 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 blah. That's what you'd write down. You get merits and demerits. The merit system was pretty cool. I never got any of the prizes for getting the merits. They'd like give kids iPods and stuff, which is pretty cool. I didn't get an iPod from the school. I was so bummed out because of that. And I believe that's what led me to actually my family just buying us iPods. Because I was just so bummed out. I was like, oh man, this iPod, I didn't win it at school. I was trying so hard to get as many merits as possible. Anyway, besides the point, I don't know why I'm talking about that. But you probably even figured out what school it was now. But yeah, no, the school was a very interesting experience because it taught me a lot. Like, I remember, like I said, I was on Tumblr and I was trying to think of a name. And the way I kind of found out about the name was some kid took my planner and they wrote "Get a Life" in the homework section, and they wrote "Due Monday." And I was one of those kids that always did my homework. So it sort of encouraged me. I was like, okay, this is my Tumblr name. It's called Get a Life. And the way I got into podcasting was that very summer. I was still blogging and stuff. And I did a podcast because I found out one of my friends online, he was like part of Machinima. This is when Machinima was really big. And he was like, oh, no, he wasn't even part of Machinima. I'm remembering things wrong. He wanted to be a part of Machinima. And he finally got into Machinima and just quit YouTube. I think he wanted to see how far he could go. But yeah, he was basically a Battlefield content creator and streamer at the time. And I used to watch his streams, Battlefield and stuff like that. Because like I said, I was getting into Call of Duty, getting into Battlefield and stuff. I was watching his streams. He was such a cool guy. And he had a podcast. I think it was called Sharpshooters. And I was like, dude, this guy's talking openly about gaming. Let me figure out how to do a podcast. So I like YouTubed how to do a podcast, and I looked at all these different like how-tos online. And back then it was not easy to do. You had to figure out RSS feeds and all that other XML files and blah, 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 which was a headache, to be honest with you, especially for a 14-year-old to figure out. And yeah, it was so weird. And I think Halloween of that year being 2010, is when I did my first podcast. And it was the first episode of Get Life podcast. And guess what? I focused it on Call of Duty. I didn't even have the guts to focus on Dynasty Warriors. I thought, okay, let me talk about Call of Duty. It's safe. You know, I'm not sharing this to anyone. But there was a lot of people on Tumblr that I followed that were heavily invested in Call of Duty at the time and things like that. One of the people, actually, I don't know if they still do Call of Duty content. I don't think they do. But one of the people was actually Black Crystal. She's a very popular streamer now and things like that. And we go way back. She was one of my first Tumblr followers, which was kind of insane to think about it. She was very supportive from the very beginning. So shout out to you. But yeah. And I think it was because of Call of Duty that, you know, we kind of became friends, I guess. And it was Modern Warfare 2 brought a lot of people together, you know? But yeah, that was the first time that I realized, oh, I can make friends online, you know, friends my age, you know? Like all these kids bullying at me at school doesn't matter anymore, because the moment I finish school, I can hang out with my friends, play some games, and a lot of the time it would be because of Call of Duty. But, you know, because Dynasty Warriors did not have online play at the time. But, you know, that's how I interacted with my friends. And in fact, I would not interact with people at school because they were jerks a lot of the time. Like I said, you had Daniil Senpai and a lot of the other friends. They were kind of cool. But a lot of the time I would just stay in the science lab, do all of my homework during lunch and recess. And by the time I get home, all my homework was done. And yeah, I could just relax, play some games. No one would say anything to me because I had the proof. My homework was done. I was getting great grades as well because all of the studying that I was doing at school, you know, I didn't study at home. I mean, for exams, yes, but like, you know, during term time, I didn't study at home. I did all my work at school. Anyway, besides the point. So yeah, did all my work at school, back onto the Tumblr point. So I called the Get a Life podcast in reference to that bullying incident. And it got worse. Like, genuinely, those kids that did that, I know who they are, by the way. I know who you guys are. Those kids that did that took it a step further, and they started sending me like anonymous messages and started sending me death threats. And they were like, dude, we're going to kill you. You should go and kill yourself. Otherwise, we're going to kill you. Stuff like that. It was like horrible stuff. I mean, imagine being a 13-year-old and being on the internet and just experiencing people like this and not knowing where it came from. And the school figured it out because this was happening in IT class. So I would get home and see these messages, but the kids were able to log into Tumblr because there was no like content block or whatever at the time. And they were sending me like these anonymous messages. And the school had figured it out, I think, because I think it had something to do with IP addresses. I'm not too tech savvy, but they figured out who those kids were. And they didn't do much. They just told them off, suspended them, and it just continued and continued and continued to the point where these kids were doing it at home. You know, a lot of the kids were, had access to the internet at home, or they would go to libraries and do this, and it would just continue and continue and continue. And it got me down for a bit. And that was sort of the spark that made me think, you know what? I'm not going to talk about games that other people want me to talk about anymore. I want to talk about the games I want to talk about, like Dynasty Warriors. So I made community friends. I had joined a Tumblr blog, although I was following a Tumblr blog at the time called Inspector Chin. Don't know if you guys know him. Chin, actually, from previously a community manager of Koei Tecmo. I made friends with him. Didn't know who he was, but I was like, this guy, pretty cool guys. We had some really great discussions around Dynasty Warriors and things like that, which was great. Didn't know who he was until I joined Twitter. And I was like, damn, you work for Koei? Like, what? It confused me. And obviously we did episodes together and things like that. We built a great relationship with Koei over the years through that. And it helped me build other relationships as well, which was great. But prior to that, I had joined a Tumblr blog. Actually, I had followed this Tumblr blog called Dynasty Warriors. And I'm pronouncing it Dynasty Warriors because it was run by an American, so they're not going to know Dynasty Warriors, are they? So yeah, this Dynasty Warriors blog. And it was basically a fan blog that basically reposted and reblogged fan art and like official art and stuff like that of the games. And I was doing this podcast and I was like, oh, I would love to be like a moderator of this blog. Because the person at the time who had run this blog and owned this blog had basically reached out to a lot of people. Well, not reached out to a lot of people. The person that had run this blog had put out a post saying, hey, we're looking for mods. If you want to join, these are the responsibilities, blah, 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 blah. I had seen this like 3 months late. And so I messaged the person that run the blog and I was like, look, I'd love to be part of this blog in any way, shape or form. I don't know. I'm not really good with Tumblr, so I don't know anything, but I can make podcasts for you guys if you want, or I can promote it on the podcast that we have. And I showed them my credentials. Like it was like a CV, like I was applying for a job. Mind you, this blog was not making any money. It was Tumblr. No one was making money, right? But yeah. And the person that got back to me was Swan. I don't know if you guys know who Swan is. We've had her on the podcast before. And I don't really talk to her anymore, but she was a great friend back then. So yeah, she reached out to me and she was like, yeah, you can join the blog. And I was like, okay, by the way, I don't know how all of this fan art stuff, like I'm not really good at that. Can I do something else? I kind of felt like a little bit of a burden at the beginning because I wasn't really contributing to the blog until something clicked in my head and I was like, oh my God, I can use information that I gained from the podcast. So that's what I did. I used it as a promotional tool. And anytime I got like information from Chin, and it wasn't secret information, it was like publicly known information. But like I said, at the time, you kind of got this information from magazines and the early internet. Oh, I say early internet. We weren't really in the early internet, but the internet was still in its sort of adolescence. It hadn't gotten to the point where you can actually search for things reliably and things like that. So yeah, I was getting all this information from Chin and I put these into these blog posts and I would be like, if you guys have any questions, please, ask questions and whatnot. So we'd get a lot of people asking questions, some anonymously, some not anonymously. And they would ask questions like, when's the next Dynasty Warriors coming out? Who are the characters are we going to see? What consoles is it, etc., etc. So stuff that was basically available on press releases. So I was getting press releases at the time, not really knowing what they were. And I was taking the information from there and putting it on the blog. And the blog kind of became more than one thing. It wasn't just fan art anymore. It was fan art and information. And Koei was already looking at the blog and they were really excited about it. And so I was kind of like the in-between guy. Like Chin would reach out to me and he'd be like, hey, we've got codes for games. Bear in mind, these are only Europe codes, so you can only give them away in Europe. We've got these codes for the games. Do you want to kind of give them out on the blog? And I was like, let me ask Swan. I asked Swan. She said it was cool, and we posted it. So stuff like that. It then kind of turned out that we were getting a lot of hate as well. And it was because there was those bullies from school that figured out that I was doing this blog as well. And they were starting to attack it. And they were like, oh, Dynasty Warriors sucks. And like making comments like that. And then also the same suicidal things like, hey, you should kill yourself. So there was a lot of that was still going on there. So there was a lot of harassment from there. I was like, oh my God. So I think at one point they had to turn off questions from anonymous people. But yeah, so that helped me kind of interact with the community more. This is obviously before like people knew about subreddits. I mean, people knew about subreddits. Reddit has been around for a while, but like teens and children effectively knowing about these things. So yeah, high schoolers effectively. Like Tumblr was kind of like Reddit for high schoolers at the time, I think. Maybe less toxic. And yeah, so yeah, Tumblr. That was my Tumblr days. And because of the Tumblr, actually, and because of the association with the blog and with Koei, I had access to a lot of growth, because I'd post the podcast on there, obviously with the owner of the blog's permission. Like, hey, can I post? And they said, yeah, you can post links to your podcast as long as it's Dynasty Warriors related. I said, okay, cool, let's do that. So any sort of Dynasty Warriors episode I put up and it would get a lot of views, and then Koei would retweet it and reblog it and things like that. And yeah, it even kind of got to a point where we were getting like voice actor interviews and I was putting it up on the blog because I knew that's where people want to see, like when we did our interview with KG Tang. And like I said, I mean, I always reference KG a lot and he's such a good friend of the show. But when we spoke with him, he didn't do that many roles. He was very new to voice acting. And Suma Zhao was like one of his first roles, I think. So if not, I think it was one of his bigger roles. So having him on the podcast, especially because the fan art on the blog in the queue was mostly like based around the Jin Kingdom because of Dynasty Warriors 7. So there was a lot of hype around characters like Wang Yuanji and Suma Zhao and all of this kind of stuff. So having the voice actor of Sima Zhao was just fantastic for us and things like that. So I think it was a very difficult time, like I said, in high school. Like people made fun of me, people bullied me, like I was getting like beaten at sometimes. Like kids would throw my backpack like it was a hot potato. And yeah, kids were brutal. Kids are still brutal. I think, to be fair with you, it sucked, but I think if those things didn't happen, I wouldn't have done the podcast because I wouldn't, like, I see it like this. Like, if I had an opportunity to talk about gaming publicly and without any fear or anything like that, then I don't think I would have ever created the podcast as a place for me to talk about the games that I like. And like I said, looking back at 15 years, I'm reminiscing on the greatest moments. And I was talking about it yesterday and like remembering all these old episodes that we did, you know, like when we went to visit Marvelous and they broke my microphone equipment with a mouse pad, or when I recorded with Nathan under a staircase at Koei Tecmo's office because there was no meeting rooms available. You know, that stuff like that, weird and wonderful stuff like that. Or going to Reef Entertainment in Croydon. It was my first time in Croydon. I was so scared. I had gone on a tram for the first time as well. And it was in like an industrial park. And I was so scared. But it was so fun as well because they showed me like distribution. I learned so much as well. And I don't think there's actually, I mean, there's definitely gaming podcasts that have been around as long as we have, even longer. But ones that are focused on Japanese games, I don't know. And that kind of brings me back to the point, like the podcast is kind of a place where I'm open to talk about all sorts of games. Like I mentioned in the disclaimer, indie titles, AAA titles, Japanese games, anything really. And I want the next, 15 years, 20 years, 100 years of GALP to still remain that. Like I want to talk about a bunch of different games that I'm experiencing for the first time. I'm getting into otome games. So, I want to talk about that once I kind of finish through some games I'm playing. Or I'm experiencing Atelier for the first time. You're like, what? Bish, what the hell are you talking about? You've covered Atelier before. Yes, but I've never actually properly played an Atelier game. The reason being is because it was a meme on the podcast where I would get Atelier code and I would never play it. Because it's like, what the hell is this game? I don't want to play it. Nathan, it was actually started off with Chin. Chin was the one that was giving us code. And then Nathan would give us code. And we're like, why? Why are we giving us code for this game that I don't want to play? And then Nathan would be like, no, play this game. Please play this. Play this one. Play this one. And he would still give us code. And we'd review them. And you're wondering, Bish, how would you review them if you didn't play them? We'd give them to Jacob. Poor Jacob. That was like his job at the podcast for like 10 years maybe. We're just reviewing Atelier games. And then it came to the point with Ryza. And then Nathan was like, no, you need to play Ryza. I was like, okay, Nathan, let me play Ryza. And the first code I got for Ryza was for the Nintendo Switch. I had requested a Nintendo Switch code for Ryza. And Ryza 2, I got a PS4 code. And Ryza 3, I got a PS5 code. And I was like, man, I wanted the Switch code. And Nathan was like, no, I'm giving you a PlayStation code. You got to play on PlayStation. But for me, Ryza kind of felt like the Switch, game, But I think that's one of the reasons why I didn't actually get to play Ryza, because it was on the Switch and it didn't really perform well. So maybe that's why. And yeah, it was kind of a meme on the podcast that I never actually played Atelier games. And Yumiya came out and I didn't even get code for it. I think Koei was sick of it. They were like, look, you're not even going to play the Atelier games. And now that they didn't get me code, I'm like, you know what? I got to buy it. So I bought Yumiya and maybe expect a review, or maybe I'm playing Yumiya for myself. That's another thing. There's so many games that I want to talk about on the podcast, but at the same time, I kind of want to enjoy for myself a little bit. Like Monster Hunter Wilds, like I did mention, oh yeah, we're going to talk about it on the podcast, but I want to play it. I want to enjoy it, There's so many other games, actually. There's like Stellar Blade. There is Persona. This is another thing. Persona 3. I got code for Persona 3 and I was supposed to review it. And I got so invested in that game that I just stopped reviewing it because I was like, no, I need to play this game multiple times. I need to enjoy it like Persona 5 and actually come out with my review. My review is coming out soon, by the way. I've spent like a year and a half playing Persona 3. I haven't even gotten to the answer yet, but a year and a half playing Persona 3, a year and a half playing Like a Dragon 8, Infinite Wealth. Yeah, so expect those episodes. Those are going to be huge episodes. And I really want to get guests on for those episodes as well. So yeah, but those games are kind of like for me, And yeah, I don't know where this episode went. It's like 46 minutes long. I'm going to cut it be like 30 minutes, I hope. If not, I really liked talking about how the podcast got started because not many people know about the origins. If you know, you know, but now you know. So yeah, now you guys know. And I've always kind of seen the podcast as I wouldn't say a form of therapy, but it's always kind of been good for me to let out my opinions and to just speak into a microphone and just forget about everything, you know, just like talk. And hope you guys enjoy my ramblings and hope you guys enjoyed the origins of the podcast. I don't know if we're ever going to do a Switch 2 episode. Probably by this point, the Switch 2 would have already released. So yeah, actually, you know what? Next week, we are going to do a Switch 2 episode. I promise. I promise. Anyway, love you guys. Bye.